So, I know that you know the speakers, but I will reintroduce them because they deserve to have their introductions.
Thank you.
First of all, one is a dear friend and the other is just a dear. So. And they're both foreign-born, war-torn, and in exile at Folkways. She's laughing. So you need to know about Fern that she's not merely a docent at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, however grand that is, but she also has a pretty good history. She's graduated from the Connecticut College for Women, and she studied at Bonn University in Germany. She got her MA in art history from Temple University, and she's taught art history at Temple, at Philadelphia College Textiles and Sciences, and at Beaver College, which was my alma mater, so I congratulate her for that. As for Kostas, he was actually the first American to receive the gold medallion from the Greek government for a scholar from any country for his translations. He has 24 published books. Unfortunately, I rarely get to see him. I look at the books once in a while, that reminds me. He's been invited keynote speaker at Baruch College for the Globus Seminar Series lectures, for the ILIAD Chair lectures in Neo-Hellenic Studies at Rutgers, the Embassy of Greece, and the Library of Canada in Ottawa. And he was the longtime editor of an international journal called College Literature, which was peer-reviewed. That journal won 8 awards for excellence from the Council of Learned Journals, including the Phoenix Award for Distinguished Editorial Achievement. So I suspect you're going to have a good show with them. At the end, they'll take questions, and we'll pull up the lights so they can walk around on the stage, and you'll enjoy that. So thank you, and good luck.
First of all, I'm glad to be called dear. Secondly, I want to thank the 3 M's, you know, as in Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. Oh no, Linda Myrsiades, John Mulvihill, and Frank Morse, who have spent time with us getting us set up here tonight. The program is going to be divided into 3 parts. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes in the beginning, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Cy Twombly. And I was reminded by Richard Newman a few minutes ago that I had shown a Cy Twombly picture, an image, on my last talk here. So how many of you, this was the original question, how many of you, before the ads went up for this, knew anything about Cy Twombly or even knew that name? So a lot of you, so that's really good, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about who Cy Twombly was as a painter, what his background was, and try and give you a little overview into what you're going to see. And then Kostas is going to talk about the 50 days at Iliam, specifically from Homer's Odyssey, that Twombly's 50? Iliad. Thank you. You can. So, and then after he's spent some time setting it up for you, then at the end, we're going to go through the 10 images together and have a dialogue with the images, hopefully. Anyway, what I'm going to tell you about is a little bit about Cy Twombly's life. What? I did the right thing, okay. So just a few minutes of background. He was born in 1928, dies in 2011. He was born in Lexington, he was born in Lexington, Virginia. What I think is fun is his father was the sports coach, baseball coach at Washington and Lee University, and his father's nickname was Cy because he was called after Cy Young, the great early 20th century baseball pitcher. Am I right about that? Yes, okay. I knew I'd be corrected if I wasn't. He was, at the age of 12, he was given private lessons in art, because already at that age he showed a proclivity towards wanting to be do something with his hands and paint and drawing. And in his own family environment, he had a lot of Greek and Latin studies. And what I'm going to try and talk to you about is the whirlwind that was his life, because I think that his life as he lived it is really illustrated in the way that he executes his style. He went to Washington Lee University for a short while. Then he went to the MFA School of Arts in Boston. Then he went to New York. This was in the early 50s, and he meets artists like Franz Klein, John Cage, Robert Motherwell, and Bob Rauschenberg. And then he travels on a fellowship with Rauschenberg throughout Europe. Can you imagine these two young men who are talented, gifted, brainy, and really enthusiastic about what they were seeing? And they traveled mostly in Southern Europe and in North Africa, particularly in Egypt. And so they had a whole year of this. In the meanwhile, he'd also spent his 6 months of service to the US government as a cryptographer for the Army. And in 1951, he actually had his first exhibition in New York City, which was not well received. It was very much part of the abstract expressionist movement, a movement which rejected painting as having any subject matter, painting which was just marks on a canvas. And he, at that point, was actually painting with white house paint, because he said, white house paint for me is like painting sculpture. So you have to think about that as, when you look back at the classical world, although we know now that it wasn't so, that Greek and Roman sculptures appeared to us as being white because they were marble, and the paint that was on them has long gone. He was a voracious reader. He read Homer, Ovid, Virgil, Mallarmé, Rilke, Keats, Sappho, Virgil, and Alexander Pope. And his life begins to change, and this is a photograph of him, I think, in the last decade of his life, and next to it is your first view of the exhibition space. In 1957, he moves to Rome with his sister. And what does he do there? But he meets the sister of a baron, a woman named Tatiana Franchetti. He gets married to her. He lives in a palazzo with her on one of the most fashionable streets in Rome. And essentially, for the rest of his life, he is based in Rome. He later buys another house, a studio in Rome, and then he buys a studio in Bassano. So I think he came from money. I think his wife had money, and certainly in the mid-70s, he starts selling his work. But he doesn't stay in Rome. He goes back and forth between the United States. He travels extensively. He goes with a friend of his, a companion, not his wife, to Greece every summer. And what happens during this period, because he's still in touch with Bob Rauschenberg, is that he and Twombly decide they want to go beyond abstract expressionism. And in 2012, there was an exhibit at the Tate Modern in London called Monet, Whistler, and Twombly. And I think it might be interesting for you to sort of recognize how much Twombly was recognized as being part of a whole different effort in painting. Whistler, as I'm sure you know, 1834, this is not a big painting. It's about this big. I didn't mean to do that. Excuse me, that's the pointer. It's probably about this big, okay? So it's not a big painting, but it's called The Burning of the Houses of Parliament, and it is a swirl of yellows and little reds and blues. And how do we know? How does Turner come to paint this? He sits on a boat in the middle of the Thames while this conflagration was going on. This is before paint in tubes was invented, so he's not going to paint the scene as he's there. He comes home and paints it. And then if you think about Monet, this is a painting, also a smallish painting in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, called the Japanese Footbridge. And the most notable thing about this is, come on, Fern. Most notable thing about this is the water lilies in the pond, which are an import from Asia, which Monet cultivates, and for the last 30 years of his life, he paints everything that is reflected in and around that water. And eventually, towards the end of his life, he paints these enormous paintings of the water lilies, and it's in the Musée Lingerie in Paris, and they are enormous. They are 10 foot high, 30 feet long, and they're in an ovoid room, so when you walk in there, it's like being in a temple. And that is the kind of effect we're going to get with Twombly. Now, where was I going to go? Oh, yes, I know what I was going to say next. Yes, Twombly paints, he paints large series paintings. One is called The Death of Commodus, which is painted in the mid-70s. Commodus, am I pronouncing it correctly, Ken? Was an excessively cruel second century emperor, in which I think took place the Battle of Lepanto, in which 40,000 people were killed in one day. And so he has, during his lifetime, these series of painting series. I'm repeating myself there, but he paints 10 or 12 works which are meant to be in a series, meant to echo something from the classical world, which has particularly struck him. In 2010, one of the last works he was commissioned to do, there is a painting in the ceiling of the Louvre which depicts simply a blue sky with the names of gods in discs all the way around there. And Kostas has tried to read them. And I think this photograph was taken when the objects were not in the space. But it was a room which was intended to show, which is called the Salle des Bronzes, and it's showing all the artifacts from the ancient world, whether in fragments of marble or pieces of ceramics or helmets and that kind of stuff. And so it's an important room in the Louvre. And he was the third artist, living artist, to be commissioned, and this happened a year before he died, to do a painting in the Louvre that is actually going to become part of the Louvre's surface. 50 Days at Iliam, the works that we're going to be talking about, was first, he executed over 2 summers in 1977 and 78 in Bassano in Italy. It was first shown at the Dia Art Foundation, which I think was the Dia in New York City. There's another Dia up near north of New York City, but I think it was shown first in New York City. And after that showing, the works were put into a box. And then in 1989, the PMA, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, purchased these images with the condition that they would remain forever in the Philadelphia Museum of Art and in a gallery which would be dedicated to our artist, Cy Twombly. And I'm trying to think where I wanted to go next before I turn it over. Am I showing anything else?
Yeah, one more.
One more. Oh, yes. This is a slide I added today. After he died in 2010, this was a photograph taken in his, it's sideways.
Sideways.
It's sideways.
Sorry. I can't see him again.
I sent the photograph to Kostas earlier today because I found it. I was looking over my material and I found it. And it's a photograph. This is the floor of his studio. These are his empty shoes, and these are paint drippings down the wall. So I'm sorry, because I thought it was such a poignant painting with these empty paint bedaubed shoes showing the absence of his presence in his studio. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kostas, and he's going to send us through Iliam. Oh, sorry, here, I'll just take it. I'm sure I forgot to say things, so I apologize. I'll catch up later.
First, I'm showing. I have to turn this on. First, can you hear me? Okay. First, I'm showing you two panels so you can see what this place looks like. The man at the door is looking into the room, but if he were to turn around, he would see panel number 1, which is outside in the hallway. And then as you come in, you see these other 9 panels. This is looking from deep into the hall towards the door, and you see the rest of the panels. The middle one up there is number 6, which is the important one, actually. So I'm going to talk about what he's trying to do here. Here's a diagram I have of the installation. It's called 50 Days at Iliam, and the spelling is important. It's I-L-I-A-M. In Greek, the word is Ilion with an O, which means Troy. In Latin, it's Iliam with a U. Twombly uses the A for a very good reason, because he wants to emphasize Achilles, whose name starts with an A, plus many of the Greek gods. Artemis, Aphrodite, Eris, Apollo, Athena, they all start with an A, and he wants to emphasize that A. That's one reason. There are many other reasons for doing that. So first, I want to show you the way these are set up. You start down here. You enter. There's a hallway here that you come in, and as you come in, you see this number 1 painting. That's the shield of Achilles. And when you enter the room, you have on this side, on the left side, 2, 3, 4, 5, which represent the Greeks. And on the other side, you have 7, 8, 9, and 10, which represent the Trojans, the Ilians. And up here, you have the main picture which divides these two sides. And they're arranged in a very special way, so that number 4, which is actually Achaeans in battle, is parallel to number 8, which is Ilians in battle. And that happens often throughout. Down here, for example, number 2 is the heroes of the Achaeans, and the very last one is the heroes of the Ilians. So they balance each other, and they do that throughout. So here you see Homer's Iliad being depicted as you go up, and you have the deaths of the main heroes here, so that when you enter the room, what you really see is death, which is also the largest panel in this collection. And then you start down on the other side with the house of Priam, and then the next one, as I said, was Ilians in battle, and then you see shades of eternal night. When you see the word shades, it means death, both in the translation that is being used and in Homer's Iliad. Now, why 50 days at Iliam? Homer's Iliad is an epic of about 16,000 words that tells the story of the Trojan War, but Homer only spends 50 days, tells us about the 50 days in the 9th year of the war. Actually, it's 52 days, but poets take poetic license, and he just rounds it off to 50. So the 50 refers to Homer's Iliad, which is 50 days. The 10 panels refer to the 10 years that the Trojan War was conducted. So it's a 10-year war. Well, I lost. It's a 10-year war that takes 50 days to narrate. But in those 50 days, Homer gives you an idea of all 9 years. And the main idea here of Homer is the anger of the main character, who is the warrior Achilles. Homer writes about a warrior society. This is around 725 BCE. And in this society, it's a patriarchal society. It's a male-oriented society. There are no women in the battle. And the important thing is, in order to win any kind of honor, any kind of fame, in order to prove oneself, the only way to do it is to fight in war. And you fight in war to win honor, because honor is the closest that a mortal can get to immortality. They know they're going to die, so how are they going to be remembered? They're going to be remembered by the feats that they accomplish in battle. Now, there has to be some way of showing how they accomplish these feats. And the way they accomplish them is by the rewards that they get from fighting, which is usually women that they take as slaves or for their own use, children that they can sell as slaves, and the men they kill, and the monuments that are built in their honor. So that's how they will be remembered in generations to come. So the whole Iliad is based on the idea of men winning honor. And that's why they fight, and that's why they're willing to die. So in Homer's Iliad, at the very beginning, the main warrior, Achilles, is angered. And he is angered because his honor has been taken away from him. How do you take away honor? You take away honor by taking his possessions. And what possessions are the more important to him are the women he has been given for the feats he has performed. So when his woman is taken away, he questions the idea of honor for the first time. And he says, what is honor if it can be taken away? And so in order to think about it, he sits out the war. The Iliad is divided into 24 parts. Each part is called a book. And each part is represented by one of the letters of the Greek alphabet. Now we merely just number them from 1 to 24. So the moment that Achilles steps out of the war, thinking about what is honor, the battle continues, but he does not re-enter the war till book 19, which is almost at the end of the Iliad. And that's when you have the fiercest fighting when he comes back, because he still has that anger, but he has put aside his anger because his friend, his closest friend, has been killed, and now the anger always turns into vengeance. So what Twombly is doing is reading Homer's Iliad in a translation by Alexander Pope, which was done in the 18th century, 1715 to 1720. It took him that many years to do it, and he did it in 6 volumes, and it was always considered, since that time, as probably the best English translation of the Iliad But the problem is it's more Pope than it is Homer, because Pope is a poet himself, and he wrote a great English poem based on Homer. That's the poem that Twombly is reading. And the part that really touches him is the point where Achilles' friend Patroclus is killed, which happens in Book 16. And then the battle really begins in Book 17, when the Greeks try to retrieve the body of Patroclus. Because again, it's a great honor if the enemy can not only take the armor of the fallen hero, but take the body itself, which they can use to ransom and make more money. So there's a great fight trying to retrieve the body. The armor, which is divine armor, that was Achilles, that Patroclus is wearing for other reasons we won't go into because it would take forever. They take the armor they keep, but the body they fight for, and eventually it goes to the Greeks. Now, when Achilles finds out that his friend has died, has fallen, he forgets his anger. It's still there, but he puts it aside, and now he wants vengeance. The person that has killed Patroclus is the main warrior on the other side, called Hector. So he goes in and fights and eventually kills Hector. And beyond the Iliad, Homer doesn't go into that, but the audience knows the story inside out, so he doesn't have to tell them. Achilles himself will be killed. So all the main heroes are eventually killed. So when Twombly is reading this, he is impressed by the verse of Pope and the way it moves. He says at one point, the line that he really touches on is that Pope, in reading the original Homer, says that the verse moves almost like fire, and the story really moves very fast. He says, they pour along like a fire that sweeps the whole earth before it. This made a great impression to him, because first of all, Twombly is anti-war. The Iliad is anti-war. It's all fighting. It shows what, there's a paradox here, an irony, that in order to win fame and honor, you have to fight to kill others. And in going into war, killing others, it changes human beings into monsters, because they do all kinds of horrible things and commit all kinds of atrocities, like dragging bodies around the ground, by throwing bodies to the dogs, so they will not be buried, so they will not go to Hades, to the underworld. And this is what impresses Twombly. So he's using his painting, the 10 paintings are on books 17 through 22. Because the moment Achilles kills Hector, it's over, pretty much. But there's more here too, concerning this. The emphasis on these particular books shows the anti-war emphasis that Twombly is trying to express, and also he's trying to do something else. He's not illustrating the Iliad. That's been done. If he were to illustrate it, he would have to take a particular scene, like the wooden horse scene or the abduction of Helen of Troy. He doesn't want to illustrate it. He wants to use painting to tell the story of the Iliad, the entire story, and more than that, to give you the idea. What are the ideas that Homer's trying to express? And that's why he does 10 panels. And to do this, there's an interesting that we're going to talk about, the shield becomes one of the main symbols throughout these paintings, the shield of Achilles. And there are a number of reasons why it becomes this. But one reason is that Homer, in Book 18 of the Iliad, spends a great deal of time, 40% of that entire book, in describing the shield. And the description that he uses has a certain term that is used. It's called ekphrasis. And the word ekphrasis, which is an English word, ekphrasis, ekphrasis, means that you're doing a textual description of a visual work of art. So what Homer is doing is using words to try and draw a painting, a picture of the shield, which represents the world, which represents everything that's going on in the Iliad. And there's the shield. This is an artist's representation. That's Homer's description, although it's a little off, I discovered as I'm looking at it. The way Homer describes the shield, there are 4 concentric circles. The black part that you see there is one circle, which represents the earth, the sun, the sky, the sea, and the constellations. Following that, that's circle 1, it's called. Circle 2, which comes after that, is divided into 2 parts, where he describes a city at peace, and another part where he describes a city at war. And 40% of the description of the entire shield has to do with the description of the city at war, which is actually a summary of the entire Iliad. That's the second circle. The third circle, which actually on this diagram is the next 2, he represents the seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, and the activities that go on during those seasons, and also other activities that you see right above. He names, I can't see here, let me see. He has reaping, which would be spring, vintage, summer. This is winter. No, I guess you start here. Plowing, reaping, vintage, sacrifice, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And around that, you have activities that occur during these seasons. So that's the third circle. The fourth circle in Homer is this one up here, which is dance, people celebrating after the harvest and having a good time. And the rim of the fourth circle, the rim, which would be here, is this here, is the ocean, which encircles the earth. So that's the shield of Achilles. And Twombly uses this because it's the central theme of the Iliad. So you'll see this shield in all 10 panels. He represents it, as you'll see later on, as a circle of fire. And we'll explain that too as we go through that. So what Twombly is doing, what I said ekphrasis, since Homer is explaining the images by using words, Twombly is using a reverse ekphrasis where he is visually describing a textual work of art, just the reverse. Now, why do I find this important? I find it important because throughout the Iliad, the way Homer visualizes things is through the simile. A is like B. A is as B or A is like B, but the Homeric simile is reversed, where you talk about the second part in great detail, and then at the end you say, so is A. And what Twombly is doing is also reversing what he sees as the most important thing, which is the shield itself, trying to use imagery to explain a text, a work of art in words. Let me see. So that's the shield is the most important part, I think, in the paintings. There are just a few other things that I think you should look out for as we go through the paintings. The other, I have these two pictures. These are early paintings of Twombly. You can see here they're 1962. The one over here, which is called Achilles Mourning the Death of Patroclus. From 1962, he's involved with the Iliad, because the Iliam paintings, the 50 Days at Ilium, were not completed till 1978. So here you are 16 years before that, where he's involved with the same kind of things that you're going to see in the paintings. And what he uses here is the idea of the circle, the shield, but also it becomes a cloud. And eventually the cloud dissipates and it becomes like a cloud, a soul that dissipates and disappears. As you can see here, if it's called Mourning the Death of Patroclus, this is Patroclus. You can see already the cloud dissipating, but the Achilles cloud is still very red, full of life, blood. And he follows this notation. So what Twombly's doing is trying to find a language using all kinds of painterly methods to tell his story. It's, for example, like trying to write Shakespeare's sonnet using Morse code. You use lines and dots. If somebody doesn't know Morse code, you think, oh, my kid can do this. It's just lines and dots. But those lines and dots have a language, and those that know the code can read what is going on by looking at those lines and dots. Twombly does the same thing. He uses the circle, as I said, for a shield, for a shade, for life, and he uses the A for Achilles, for Achaeans, for aggression, for the various names of the gods, because they're the ones that are involved in the battle. Here, early on, this is called Vengeance of Achilles, which also becomes, in 1978, one of the major paintings in the Iliam series. It's painting number 3, called The Vengeance of Achilles. And what you see here is the A form, which can remind you of a rocket, the fire, the smoke, can remind you of a spear up here, which is very apropos for a battle. And it also reminds you, the way he uses the paintings, of the phallus symbol, because he says, what better way of describing the male than a phallus symbol? It's a man's world. It's an aggressive world. It's a world where they're always going after women. There is rape concerned throughout. The whole Iliad is based on the abduction of a woman, Helen of Troy. And the anger that comes later between Achilles is because his woman, named Myrsiades, has been taken by the commander-in-chief. And why does the commander-in-chief take Achilles' woman? Because his own woman, Chryseis, had to be returned to a prophet of Apollo. And Apollo was punishing the army because Agamemnon would not return her to her father, the prophet. So he, as a commander, merely takes Achilles' woman. And Achilles says, if they can take what is awarded to me for my efforts, what is honor then? Honor is not something solid. And this is important for the character of Achilles, because he's the only character in the entire epic whose fate is known to us. Because at the very beginning, his mother, who is a semi-goddess, informs him that he can either go to war and win honor, but die young, or he cannot go to war, stay home, and live to a ripe old age. So he has a choice. He knows that the moment he goes to war, he dies. If he stays home, he becomes an old man, but without any type of honor. Nobody will know him. If he goes to war, he's going to win honor, but he's going to die very young. So honor is very important to him, and he has to know exactly what it is, and something that is lasting and something that cannot be taken away. So those are the things that impress Twombly in his paintings. And he tries to find a language. This is part of it, the A-frame, the clouds. He also uses the clouds normally or look like a lotus. Lotus is very important in Homer. If anyone read the Odyssey, you know about the lotus eaters. Where when Odysseus is trying to return home, he stops somewhere where if you eat part of the lotus plant, you forget home. It's a living death. You can never return. So that's part of it. It reminds one of a cloud, because a cloud is made of smoke, of something that dissipates, something that disappears. So you find that throughout. So the A-frame, the clouds, the shades, and Pope specifically says in his translation that the shade is death. So he takes that from the translation. And the other thing that we find throughout the paintings is the triangle. Triangle is solid.
Kostas, it's already 7:45.
Okay.
And I think we should move on.
So I only have 20 minutes, and I'm, I guess, coming up to it or have reached it already. So the triangle that you see is a symbol that is very solid, and usually the line, the hypotenuse, for Twombly represents the gods descending. So he's creating a language, and once you know some of this language, you can read the painting as you read a text, except this text is in images, whereas the Iliad text is in words. So we'll go to the paintings here now. What's that?
For the two of you, just move over there.
Okay.
Oh,
If you got the beeper,
yeah,
you gonna,
there you are.
you want me to do that? Okay, let me put this in my pocket.
Okay,
You can hear me? Where did you put it?
okay.
Where's the, oh, here it is. This, you've seen earlier, this is the shield of Achilles, and this is a close-up of a photograph taken by Kostas of a detail of what it's like. And one of the things I didn't talk about, which I meant to include, was to say there's themes with our artist here. And the artist's theme is line is action become visible. In other words, he is thinking about the story and creating lines as he moves. So you can see he starts with it's a vague lotus shape, as Kostas said, and then it becomes more exaggerated, and there's a little tiny shade of blue here. One of the things I want to emphasize, as compared with Monet's colors were blue and green and soft and gentle, and there was a lot of yellow in Turner's work. But when you come to This series of 10 paintings, most of the colors are black and red with a couple of extra ones. And one of the things that one artist said about Twombly was you have to feel it in your stomach and not your head. And the trace, the actual way in which you put a single line down, that's the record of a gesture. So you're watching things in motion and statically at the same time. And at one point, Twombly calls his work ejaculations. Did you want to say something more,
Yeah.
Kostas?
I want to point out that that circle, which represents the shield, is almost like a tumbleweed that rolls along and consumes everything in its way. You can see the red, which can be blood, which can be fire. The rest of it is kind of anger, but it's the movement too. Everything moves very fast. It rolls over everything, and it's always pointing to the right, as you can see from the other panels that will come up. So it has all those meanings. It's the shield, which is round. It's the shade that it eventually becomes when it loses all its color. Then it becomes death. It's the fire that consumes everything before it. Actually, panel number 5 is called the fire that consumes everything before it, as you'll see when we come to it. Okay, that's enough on that, I guess.
Okay. This is panel 2, which is on as you enter in the door on the left. And what is interesting about this is that some of these gods' names are very legible. Can you see them from here, or do you want to move over and take the pointer, Kostas? And this, again, is a
let me see.
detail.
Yeah, here, this is the heroes of the Achaeans. Oops. So what is being listed here are the heroes. And you can see this word says Achaeans. That means Greeks. That's the word that is used in the Iliad for Greeks. And again, the emphasis is on the triangle and the A that you see throughout. Every time you have an A, you have this point, you have the triangle that I mentioned, you have the spear point, and the important here is Achilles with the same sort of thing. And then up here you have gods, Thetis, Hera, Athena, and that's interesting too because Pope uses the Latin names throughout his translation. But even though Twombly is reading Pope, he opts for the Greek names. Athena, for example, would be Minerva. Hera would be Juno. But he wants this emphasis on the A. So in order to do that, he uses the Greek names.
And that's a recurring shape.
Yeah.
It's a phallic symbol. It's an angry symbol. So you got the beeper, so we
Over
go
here
to
is
the next
Poseidon,
one.
Hermes, Hephaestus. So those are the gods. The gods are 12, and they divide. Half of them are with the Greeks. The other half are with the Trojans. These are the gods. They're with the Greeks. And at this point, you can see the letters. Now, when it comes to the point when the gods are tired of the game because they see the battle merely as entertainment, they begin to be erased. They disappear as the panels go on. So the gods forsake the humans. They go away. And you can see erasure happening here already.
Which is the detail right here.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I think we
Right.
need to move on because
Okay.
it's almost 10 of 8.
Okay.
Just go to the next
Go
one.
next one. 3.
Oh, this,
Vengeance of Achilles. That's the one that he did in 1962, but redid here for this. And you can see the phallic symbol now much more clearly. Again, facing to the right. We're moving up the whole way to the death, and then we start moving on the other side down to the end of the Trojans.
and when we're looking at this, I'm always seeing something more. Vengeance is an A upside down, and the shield of Achilles is now projecting beyond itself and becoming not only a phallic symbol, but seems like a pistol or a gun. And again, this is one of Kostas's wonderful details that he took, and you can see how the work is scumbled. This is done on canvas, and it's done mostly with oil paint. He must have used a lot of paint.
4. This is not as good a panel because I photographed it from a book, and the spine is right here, so you get a different shade on this side. But you see how busy it is. You can almost see the anger, the frustration, as the poet tries to reveal, to get the feel of the Iliad, with all the confusion. The circles also become the chariot wheels of the heroes who come to the battlefield in chariots. And here is all the anger, the blood that's going on.
And this shape, this phallic shape, is repeated over and over and over again.
And this is interesting too here, which is very experimental. If you look at this closely, this becomes the palette of the artist, because it says right there, I took a close-up of this.
It says artist.
Yeah, it says artist there, and you can even find Twombly written somewhere. So all of this is part of the paints on
And
his
this
palette.
is the hole in which the thumb goes when you hold a palette. And it's
Right.
also the one of the few paintings which has a red color in it, and that's blue. And it's interesting that the artist is putting his palette as, and this is the most vivid blue in the whole set of 10 paintings.
So there's again that word is in Greek meaning archei, which Achaeans, the Greeks, and a big phallic symbol. And
Just
same
to remind
things.
you, he was fluent in Greek and in Latin. And the other thing is, as Kostas and I were talking, you can show there's this pyramid shape, and the gods are written as descending the pyramid. Their names seem to go down in order.
Yeah, that says Thetis. Thetis is the mother of Achilles. She's a semi-goddess. And this one says Athena, which is Athena or Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. She was on the Greek side. And again, Achaeans is written here. Hera is here again. So the gods and the other main characters.
And
Here's
Ajax is there, yeah.
There, one
So-
of the
I'm just trying to
soldiers.
keep an eye on time here, Kostas.
Okay, next, 5.
Oh, the fire which Kostas talked about
Here's
so
the
well.
fire that consumes all before it. And notice here how the fire is on the right side of this panel, facing this way, because it faces the panel that will come next, which is the main one, 6. And it's that fire that consumes everything that's going to consume what you're going to see next.
And this wonderful detail of how heavily the paint is applied, and it's not just a single red, it's various hues of red, which allows it to create a glow, and the way the black is smeared over the top so it catches the ridges of the paint underneath. And this idea that gesture is telling a story. Okay, let's
Okay.
move on.
Now, this is the largest panel. Here's Fern standing in front of it, and you can see how large it is. And it's the one that you see as you enter the room. It's at the far wall, and it's called the Shades of Achilles, Patroclus, Hector, the 3 main warriors in the Iliad. This is Achilles, who is still alive, and you can see the lotus form. Here is Patroclus, who has died already. He's the one that was killed. And here is Hector, that is disappearing because Achilles kills him for killing Patroclus. So as you face the exhibition, what hits you is this huge panel of death.
Yes, and you can see by the scale here, the color on this smaller image is a little more accurate. That blue is not as good, but it was difficult to photograph. So And to get good images of it that was not in a book. Okay.
7. Now this is now we're starting going down on the other side of the wall. These are the Trojans, the Ilians. And this one is called the House of Priam. Priam is the king of Troy, and this shows his family here. And it's interesting that the largest name and the shakiest, the trembling one, says Cassandra, who was the daughter of Priam, who predicted Troy's fate, but nobody would believe her. They thought her mad. But she was the one from the very beginning that warned everybody that get rid of Paris, her brother, because he's going to bring about the destruction of Troy, as he does, by abducting Helen and starting the war. So what you have here are the names of the family members. There's Hector, there's Polites, a brother, Diphabus, another brother of Hector, and the whole family up and down is listed, but Cassandra comes out in the larger letters because she's the one that no one listened to.
This is one of the times when this panel, as you see it on the left-hand side of the screen, is the actual size, but pretty much close to the size that you see it in the museum. And the other thing that I sort of, when I'm looking at this, I see the Cassandra's not only being erased and written and erased again, but she's almost vibrating. And this idea that a line is a gesture, is a story, it tells its own tale.
8, Ilians in battle, which balances the panel across the way, which says Greeks in battle. And again, you see the emphasis on the emphasis on the phallus here.
It's over on the left over here. Okay.
Okay.
And notice that the gods are all going downhill in that triangular form.
Yeah, and erased. Their names are gone. Usually they're written up and down here. So at this point, the gods decide they've had enough. They're bored with the whole battle, and they leave. And once they leave, the Greeks win.
Yeah, there's some blue in here, but in the larger painting, you don't notice it so well. In the detail that Kostas has pulled up, you can notice it far more. And this is the only time this color is used, which is not red, but orange. And it's, to me, that says, okay, these are the losers. They're not bright red and fierce.
That's right. Okay. 9. Now we're almost at the end. This is called the Shades of Eternal Night, which means the death of the Trojans. And you can see here, this represents pretty much all the Trojans. They're going up in a cloud. Their soul is flying away to Hades, to the underworld.
And again, that's a detail, and again, this lotus form, which doesn't have a fixed number of lobes. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 6 or 7. This has how many? 7 or 8.
And the last one, called Heroes of the Ilians, which is parallel to number 2 on the other side, which is Heroes of the Achaeans. Ilians are the Trojans, Achaeans are the Greeks.
Hector, Paris, I can't read this. Aeneas,
Yeah.
Helen, Helena.
This is Helenus, that's
Helenus.
a brother.
And-
Antenor, Dolan, and Rasius, they're all Trojan warriors.
And I think it's interesting that there's a diagonal through the middle of this cloud lotus form, which seems to sort of push it away, push it down. And this is a detail which Kostas wanted us to see, and I think it's really good to show, because you don't see that when you're seeing the paintings as large, but when you get up close, you see that it's not only are the lines drawn in gestures, but the way the paint is applied is part of the energy, part of that whirlpool that is the whole life of Cy Twombly.
That's right, and that
That's-
should do it. It might be interesting to mention, I looked up, because people usually say, who wants all these scribbles? And what I found out that the last painting that he sold was in 2015. It was called New York City, which uses these kind of scribbles. It sold for $70.5 million. Just.
I also think it's very significant that at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I don't mean to promote that, but this huge installation is there and it will never leave there. It's become as much a part of the museum as some of the other great paintings that we know there. Okay, we could put the lights on down there too, because if people have questions.
Would you ask them to turn the mics on?
What?
Ask them to turn the mic on. Okay, now is this on?
Yeah.
Questions, please.
Could you put the lights less in my eyes? That's good, thank you. Now I can
Questions?
see you a little better. That would be great. Okay, any questions? Mean we answered everything for you?
Absolutely. That's everything. It's everything I would have done myself.
It has taken me, and I think this is true for Kostas, it took us a long while to look at this and actually begin to say, wow, this affects us. You know, it is not an easy installation to look at, and I'm so grateful to Linda because she's the one who said, why don't you and Kostas do something together? No, it's...
It was me. But what's most interesting is we just went on a day to the museum, the four of us, 3 years ago. And Kostas said, oh, this is about Greece. Let's go and let's look. And Fern and I went, oh, dear. Do we have to look at this? We've been at that museum since way before these paintings were up. And we really just said, oh. And today, you have brought so much more to us for doing it, and Fern as well. The ability
He better
to do
say
this.
something nice about me.
Questions?
I've never seen it. Where is it located?
It's located in the first floor of the museum. No, excuse me, it's now the second floor. It's the second floor of the museum on the north wing all the way at the end. So if you look, it's in the contemporary art section, and it's all the way at the very end in a back corner next to a room of Brancusi's and who's the other
great
person?
glass.
Duchamp.
And the great glass.
And when did it go into the museum?
In 89, is that what I said? I think it is. I have it here on my sheet because I'm bad at names.
Yeah, 88.
Dr. Ford.
Do you have any idea why Twombly uses a delta symbol for the letter A when delta means the letter D in Greek?
Because it's cut off. The top half of an A is a delta.
There you go.
Am I right about that, Kostas?
Close enough. Anybody else?
That's a good question.
It seems ironic that you suggest that the cloud symbol is when they die and they're going to hell and it goes up into the sky.
Well, I don't know that we either said going up into the sky, did we? It's disappearing. It's fading away. Well, maybe clouds are in the sky, but it's a shape like a cloud.
Ethereal, it's a cloud, it's smoke, it goes up and it disappears. But the part that remains, there is no soul in Homer at that time yet. What goes to the underworld is a shade in the likeness of the person that died. And that shade remains in the underworld in the form that he was in life.
Yeah.
The soul comes much later.
And that idea of a shade, those gray lotus shapes are really shades of what might have been.
Okay.
Pam has a question right here.
I'm coming.
Did PMA pay for the
They didn't tell me.
I
I'm-
think they paid $12.5 million.
Thank you, Kostas, I didn't know that.
I read it someplace.
Second question, you talk about the Greeks. Who were the Trojans? I mean, I know there's Trojans, but what nationality? What?
Your question there,
The
Kostas.
nationality in Homer, they all speak Greek, the Greek language, but they occupied the northern part of Asia Minor, which is today Turkey, and it's up by Constantinople.
And
So
the
just
remains-
the northern part, it's called Ionia, that part.
And the excavations that they think was Troy is right on the coast
Right.
of, just after you come through the Bosphorus. Am I right about that?
You're right, yes.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Thank you.